Hi, my name is Arun John, and today in this demo I'll show you how to do a SQL application-aware backup and restore using PowerProtect Data Manager. We'll go ahead and create protection policies, schedules, and retention periods. We will then create an on-demand backup of SQL Server and restore the databases using PowerProtect Data Manager. We will then put on the hat of a SQL administrator and do a database restore, a table level restore, and also an instant access of the database, all from the SQL Server Management Studio. So let's get started. Here is a high-level workflow of how we achieve application-consistent backup using PowerProtect Data Manager. So the PowerProtect Data Manager user will go ahead and create a protection policy. That protection policy will in turn create what we call as a boost storage unit on the data domain system. We then go ahead and create schedules for the backup to take place. When the schedule kicks in, what happens is the PowerProtect Data Manager's external vProxy engine will push certain agents into the SQL Server host using the SQL Server's operating system credentials. These agents are the vProxy agent, the application agent, and the item point, which is used for granular recovery of tables. Now what vProxy will do is vProxy will integrate with VMware's VADP. It will take a VADP snapshot with quies option, which will internally trigger a VSS workflow. The VADP change block is mounted on the vProxy and the data is sent to the PowerProtect data domain system using source side deduplication. I have now logged on to our PowerProtect Data Manager UI. Now for the purpose of this demo, I've already pre-configured a couple of things onto our PowerProtect Data Manager. First is our protection storage. Now there are two data domain virtual editions available in this lab for us to use as a target for our PowerProtect Data Manager. We will be using ddve01.demo.local as our data domain or as our repository for all our PowerProtect Data Manager backups. Similarly, I've added an external proxy engine like I mentioned previously in the backup workflow. This proxy engine is responsible for quiescing the application, taking a snapshot, and then mounting it on the proxy server and sending the backup using source side deduplication to our PowerProtect data domain system. The transport method used will be hot-add. What I've also done is I've added under the asset source details of our vCenter server. It's very easy to add vCenter as the asset source. All you need to do is you need to give the name of the vCenter server, its credentials, the port number, and as soon as you add those details, all the assets under that vCenter will be discovered. Now again, for the purpose of this demo, I will be using SQL 03 as the database host, which needs to be backed up. Now before I go there, I also want to show you how that SQL 03 host looks like. So using the SQL Server Management Studio, I have connected to SQL 03, which is our database host. And inside the SQL 03, you have one database, which is SQL DB 01. And you also have one table, which is a table named vaccination. What is important to note here is there is no PowerProtect Data Manager plugin available yet for the SQL administrators to do their own backup and restores. Now this is because the SQL 03 host is not added to the PowerProtect Data Manager protection policy. As soon as we add that SQL Server into the PowerProtect Data Manager policy, you should be able to see a plugin which shows backup. And then once we finish the backup, we should be able to see a restore option, like a table level restore, and also an instant access option as well. I'll come back to this and show you that. So as a next step, what we will do is we will go ahead and add a protection policy so that we can back up our SQL Server 03 and all the contents, including the database and the tables. So let's go ahead and do that. Now adding a protection policy is as simple as clicking on protection policy and click on add. We give it a name. Our SQL Server 03 is a virtual machine, so we pick the type as virtual machine and say next. We're going to do an application consistent or an application aware backup. I choose that. We also need to give the credentials of the SQL Server host. So let's do that. We'll first give it a name. We'll name it SQL. And we need to give the name or the credentials of the SQL Server host. So once we verify that we have entered the correct username and the password, we click Save. And then we click Next. What we then do is we add the asset. So in this case, it is SQL 03. We can go ahead and pick that manually, or we can also automatically pick that up using dynamic rules. So in this case, we'll just go ahead and pick SQL 03 manually and say Next. Here we define the schedules and the backup retention policy. So I'm going to say I want to back up every day and retain it for 7 days. The target repository, like I mentioned before, is going to be DDV01. It's going to create a new storage unit with the name of the protection policy, which is app aware, on the data domain system. This is where all the data will land. I'll show you the name of the storage unit in the data domain system once this policy has been completed. So I'm going to leave all the other options at the default value and click on Save. We click Next. Again, we'll leave all the other options at the default value and click Next. Now I've finished creating a policy and I named it App Aware Backup. What PowerProtect Data Manager is doing in the background is actually going and creating a storage unit or a folder on the data domain system with the name App Aware. We'll now log on to our PowerProtect data domain system and verify this folder has been created. I've quickly logged on to our PowerProtect data domain system, which is DDV01. And if you go to data management and click on entries, which is the storage units, you will see that there is a new folder or entry created with the name of the protection policy, which is app_aware_backup. This is where PowerProtect is going to store its SQL backups. And now that we finished adding SQL 03 onto our protection policy, PowerProtect Data Manager protection policy, if we now go back to our SQL Server 03 and take a look at the Microsoft application agent for PowerProtect Data Manager is now installed, right? So now the SQL Server administrator can actually go ahead and do restores, table level restore or database restore or even instant access from his native UI, which is SQL Server Management Studio. So before we do that, what we'll do is we will go ahead and complete a backup of SQL 03 host using PowerProtect Data Manager. So in order to do that, what we'll do is we'll go back to our protection policy, and this was our protection policy, which is App Aware Backup. We'll go ahead and do an on-demand backup by clicking on Protect Now. So it's going to ask you, do you want to protect all the assets? We just have the SQL 03 asset, so we'll just say yes. We'll leave all the other options as default and we'll say Protect Now. So the background, there should be a job which is now kicked off. There you go. A job ID ending with 5SNN4 has been kicked off. We'll come back to this shortly and look at the status of this, and then we'll go ahead and restore our backups both from the PowerProtect Data Manager UI, and then we'll go back to our SQL Server Management Studio and try and do a table level restore from there. So our job right now ending with 5SN4 has completed successfully. So what we'll go ahead and do now is we'll go ahead and try and restore from the backups. All right. So in order to do that, we click on Recovery, click on Assets, The asset which we are interested in is SQL 03. We'll select that and we say view copies. This is only one copy because we did only one backup. We'll select that and we go ahead and say restore. So what we're going to do now is we're going to restore the entire virtual machine. So I'm going to assume that the SQL 03 has been corrupted or we lost, and we want to restore it from our backups, right? So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to say restore the entire virtual machine. We'll say next, and we say create and restore to a new virtual machine. Next, we pick our vCenter, pick the data center, and the destination, right? So the destination, we'll go ahead and choose ESXi01. It's going to say it needs about 42 or 43 gigs. We'll go ahead and check whether we have the data store for it or storage for it. So that's we'll select that and we say next. We'll give it a name. You're going to say restore of SQL 03. And we say next. And finally we click on restore. A job must have kicked out for the restore of that machine. Our restore job is now complete. We'll go ahead and verify this by going into or logging into our vCenter server and then checking whether that virtual machine has booted up. So there you go. Here we have a new virtual machine with the name restore of SQL 03, which is a copy of a SQL 03 being restored. So what we'll do next is we will go ahead and log on to our SQL Server Management Studio, and from the backups we'll go ahead and try and do a table level restore and an instant access as well. Again, we'll do this both from the SQL Server Management Studio. So to do a table level restore, first we will log on to SQL 03, which we have done, and we'll see what are the databases available under SQL 03 and what are the tables available. So under SQL 03 we have one database, which is SQL DB _01, and we also have one table which is called vaccination. So this is what we will try and attempt to do. We will try and restore this table called vaccination. So again, to do that, we just click on our the plugin, which is the PowerProtect Data Manager Microsoft plugin, and we click on table restore. What we then do is we choose the data domain where the backups was made. So we, as you know, the backups were backups landed on a storage unit called AppAware. So we click on that. We give the name of the SQL Server host, which is automatically populated, which is SQL 03, and we'll say show versions. So there's only one version there, and it's showing all the databases under that version. So we do have SQL 01 here. We'll select that as the database, and we'll select that again. I'll click on run. So it's going to mount the database now, and because it's a table level restore, item point comes into picture here. Item point is the one which gives that ability to do a table level restore. We go ahead and click next. We gave the name of the target server. So because there's only one target server, what we'll do is we will go ahead and check or click on SQL 03. and then we'll go ahead and click on the database, which is SQL DB 01, and then say finish. So here we have the tables. So we do have the vaccination table here. We do have the vaccination table here because again there's only one database, therefore you see both of them exactly the same thing. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to assume this one of these tables in the target is actually destroyed, and I'm going to copy the vaccination table onto that. So let's go ahead and say drag and drop that. It's very simple as that, just dragging and dropping that onto the table. And we'll go ahead and give it because the same table, because there's a table with the same name, we need to go and give it a different name. Or we'll go ahead and say vaccination 2, and we say OK, and then we say save. Say close. There you go. So what we've seen now is we went ahead and restored a table from one database to another database. Again, for the purpose of this demo, there was only one database, so I just copied the table onto the same database, but gave it I gave it a different name. So this shows that we can do a granular level restore of tables from the SQL Server Management Studio's UI. So in the final part of the demo, what we're going to do now is we're going to try and see whether we can do an instant access of this database. So imagine if this SQL database 01 is crashed for some reason, but you want that immediately. So what we're trying to do is we are trying to mount that database on the data domain system from the backup copy. So that's what we're going to do. So what we'll do is we'll click on instant access. Again, we choose the data domain system or the storage unit where the backup copies are kept. So the host is a SQL 03, and we say show versions. So that's the database. So we'll click on that. We'll give it a name. So when it appears, when you do an instant access, what should be the name of the database? So it's already populated at SQL 01 instant access. So I think I'm going to leave it there as the name, SQL 01 instant access. Actually, I'll make it a little more easier with just instant access. So again, the host is going to be SQL 03. And the database name is going to be SQL 01. So if everything goes well, we should see another database appear here with that name. So what we're going to do is now click on mount. So the background, the data domain system is presenting to our vCenter server as an NFS data store, and it is trying to mount that new database from on the data domain system. So which is what is happening here. So this is particularly useful again to check if the database is working properly, or the backups are working properly, I should say, or if you want to patch your database. You don't want to patch that in the production environment, but you want to actually try and patch it on a copy, test everything if it's working well, and then go ahead and patch it in the production environment. So there are many use cases for the instant access. So the restore is completed successfully. What we'll do is, in order to see this, we will just go ahead and try and close that. So at the moment it's not appeared here, it needs a refresh. So for that I'll just go ahead and close this and then open that up again. Go ahead and refresh it. There you go. So I have the second database, which is the SQL DB 01 instant access. So what we have now shown is not only the table level restore using using the SQL Server Management Studio, but also instant access using SQL Server Management Studio. So what we have done in this demo is we've created a policy schedule, and we did a application of a backup, and we also did a restore using our PowerProtect Data Manager UI, and also we did a table level restore and also an instant access restore from the SQL Server Management Studio. This concludes our demo. Thank you.